Hey all, I wholeheartedly believe that it is a great day today, because it's always a great day when we're talking about the Bishop's opening, which is one of my favorite chess openings, and it brought so much fun and success to our chess gang that I just can't resist to record a follow-up for you, and today we're going to go over the top 5 quickest wins in the Bishop's opening. Now, the Bishop's opening arises from white playing pawn to e4 on the first move, black goes pawn e5, and here comes bishop to c4, which is an unconventional opening, which is still very good and extremely tricky. Now, with these 5 games, you're going to learn some of the most common attacking patterns, as well as a few traps along the way, so that you can play it in the most aggressive way possible and seize those nice victories for yourself. In the first game, we're going to analyze black played knight to f6, which is perhaps one of the most common ways of black attacking this pawn on e4, but white just decided to counterblow with the move pawn to d4, breaking open the center of the board, and this is actually a pretty challenging variation for black. For example, here after black captures on d4, white continued playing in a gambit style, and instead of recapturing, played knight to f3, prioritizing quick development. And here there is a catch. Actually, if black is tempted to capture this pawn on e4, which is undefended, and it looks like there are no bad consequences for black in capturing this pawn whatsoever, but if black is tempted to capture it, actually after queen takes d4, so early in the game, black is already at high risk, because white is ahead in development. Also, white is gaining now one more tempo, attacking this knight, and white is ready to castle quickly and to rush into an attack. Black is once again has an extremely tough position right now. They have to play very precisely not to get checkmated quickly. And for example, if they try playing knight to d6, trying to gain a tempo attacking their bishop or trading off some material, this is already a losing error. Can you believe that? White simply castles kingside, and there is no defense for black against this quick attack along the e-file. White is going to play rook e1 no matter what. For example, black captures here on c4 instead of recapturing. White is still playing your move rook to e1. Check to the king, black has to cover, so bishop e7 is forced, and now instead of queen to c4 with got a lot stronger move, queen takes g7. Now, by doing so, we're grabbing the pawn, we're also attacking this rook on h8, and black is actually defenseless. The only way for black to save their rook from being captured is rook to f8, but then we have another beautiful follow-up. It is a move bishop to h6. And with this, we're creating a threat of queen takes f8 checkmate. That is really amazing, right? So we're taking advantage of this pin, therefore black's bishop from e7 can never move. And we simply want to grab this rook on f8, and black is defenseless. That's how black was demolished within just a few moves by playing seemingly natural opening moves. That's how powerful and tricky the bishop's opening can be. Now, the second example also shows a very common error of black. After black goes knight f6, we just cover the move pawn d4, which leads to a more sharp game. But if you don't want that, you can also play a more solid move pawn to d3, just solidifying this pawn on e4 so that black cannot capture it. And here, black may be tempted to play pawn d5. Looks like white plays a little bit timid moves, and black can actually be a little bit more active and grab the center. Now, d5, again, is a very common move in any other chess opening, and that's how black normally should play. But somehow, in this bishop's opening, this d5 move of black kind of backfires, and it's even really hard to comprehend why it is so bad for black, but somehow it is bad. The problem is, after knight to f3, black always has troubles defending this pawn on e5. For now, black just defends it, but then we castle kingside, and our plan is to play rook to e1 and to target this pawn once again. And there's never a convenient way for black to defend it, because if they ever try to do that with their bishop from f8, this hands this knight on d5. Right? The queen from d8 no longer supports it, and you can just win this knight on d5. So black cannot do that. What can they do instead? Well, in this game, they played bishop g4, trying to pin your knight down to the queen. So white played pawn h3, pushing this bishop back, and then played rook e1 anyway, putting this unpleasant opposition and targeting this pawn on e5. Black said, okay, I'm gonna defend it. Black played pawn f6. And just look at this, black made everything in his power to prevent you from capturing this pawn on e5. He pinned your knight down to the queen, he defended this pawn with the other one, and so what do? Well, you do capture this pawn on e5. That's a really beautiful combo. You're willing to sacrifice this queen on d1, because after that you have a powerful counterblow, knight takes c6, which is an attack of the queen as well as a discovered check to the king, which means that you are going to get your queen back right on the next move. And after black moves the king somewhere, let's say king f7 or whatever, we then first grab the queen, then after rook takes d8, we can now pick up this bishop on d1, and as the dust settles, we can count the material and we can see that white is up a piece and a pawn, and black can just resign. Moving on to the game number 3, in this case black said, okay, I'm not going to play pawn d5, I'm wise enough not to play that, so I'm going to play a normal move bishop to c5. And against that setup, there is also a very interesting opening idea for white, where you play knight c3, delaying the development of your kingside knight, because on the next move, you're going to play pawn to f4, kind of combining the king's gambit with the bishop's opening. But in this case, the upside is that you don't really gambit this pawn, because it is already defended with your queenside bishop. So after black goes, let's say, pawn on d6, you can now bring your knight out. And what you achieve by pushing the pawn forward to f4 is that it gives you a lot of attacking prospects in the middle game. For example, very often you're going to push this pawn forward, which will somehow press black's kingside overall, not allowing black to move their bishop away, and also preparing for your bishop to go forward. And overall, thanks to your space advantage, it is easy to develop your kingside attack later. In this position, many of your opponents would be tempted to play knight to g4, because you're playing an unconventional opening. Your opponent thinks that it is something weird, something wrong, and now after knight to g4, black just wants to play knight f2, forking your queen and rook, which looks really advantageous for black, or maybe they're going to go bishop to f2, deliver a check to your king and start attacking that way. Either way, it looks like white is somewhat in trouble and white did something wrong, but the refutation is really beautiful. This is a counter blow in the purest sense of this word, because in response to knight to g4, you're playing knight to g5, and you just counterattack in the exact same fashion. You play knight to g5, targeting this pawn f7, but your attack is superior to black's attack, and you just win here. So what's the trick? Well, if black plays, let's say, knight f2, says, okay, I don't care, I just continue to do my stuff, attacking the queen, attacking the rook, that actually helps you, because you bring your queen out, and now that only supports your attack on the king side. So now queen takes f7 is a major threat, it's checkmate in 1, black has to do something about that. And after, let's say, pawn to g6, you can now simply start attacking black's king. So if bishop takes f7, check to the king. Now the king cannot move here to f8, because in that case, you can play queen h6 and deliver a check that way. In the game, black tried king to e7, but that wasn't very safe either, because you now play knight to d5, check to the king, he tried to go back to d7, now bishop to e6. It's quite funny how you chase black's king in black's own territory. Now king went back to e8, but now there are no more checks. I mean, bishop f7 is just a repetition, so white decided to somehow remove their queen from the attack and played queen h6. And that not only saves your queen, but also it prepares for the queen to go forward, queen g7, attacking the rook, preparing for queen to f7 checkmate, so it's a pretty major threat anyway. Black decided to at least trade off some pieces, but now after knight takes e6, we create a lot of threats. We attack this queen on d8, we're threatening knight takes c7 fork, and your two vicious knights are actually attacking pretty much everything in black's territory. Black tried to move their queen away, but that failed to knight to f6, forking the king and rook and queen, and black just resigned. So once again, it's a beautiful example how by trying this kind of king's gambit idea in the middle of the bishop's opening, you could deliver this really quick and crushing attack. Moving on to the game number 4, the first moves were the same. Black still played knight bishop to c5, knight c3, d6, pawn f4, but in this case, black played knight to g4 right away. So notice that now we didn't have our knight on f3, and therefore white can't play knight to g5, right? So in the previous example, if you remember, black first played knight to c6, which gave you time for knight f3, right? So in this position, you could play that move knight to g5. In this case, black played knight g4 as early as they could, creating that threat of knight to f2. What can you do in that case? Well, we still rush into a similar counterattack, but the attacking pattern is slightly different. So we first play pawn to f5, which is a key move in most of these variations. So what it does is it cuts off this bishop, so it no longer defends the knight, therefore queen takes g4 is actually a major threat. But black is pretty happy. They say, hey, no problem, I was going to go knight f2 anyway, and now I'm just winning. Attacking the queen, attacking the rook, you guys just should resign now. But instead, we play queen to h5. It's a similar counter-attacking move to the previous example. Queen h5 creates this kind of scholar's checkmating threat of queen takes f7. But in this case, it's much harder for black to parry this attack. What can black do? Well, they can possibly castle, but I've got another video where I cover that variation and how you have a force and win against it. So if you're interested in the bishop's opening, I would definitely recommend that you check it out later. But for now, let's analyze the other options of black. So in this game, black decided to use their queen to defend this pawn, and they realized that queen e7 would fail to knight to d5, which is gonna chase the queen away. So black said, okay, let me play this move queen to d7 and just defend this pawn at least. But white played a creative attacking move bishop e6. It turned out that because of this pin, black cannot actually capture the bishop, and so white could throw this bishop forward into the attack. Now queen e7 is forced. Now I played knight to d5, still chasing this queen, And at first it looks like black should just resign, but black was resourceful enough to find the way out, so it looks like they're just losing their queen or else got checkmated, but they played g6, a counter-attacking move. So white said, okay, let me move my queen forward. So queen h6 is always a good idea for white, because from there you can go forward and support your attack. Black played queen to f8, just retreating their queen. Notice that it does not really attack this queen, because it is already defended by the bishop, therefore that would only be an exchange. And that actually turned the game into the Hunger Games, where just both players are trying to grab as much material as they could. Now white gobbles up the rook here on a8, and since there was nothing else for black to capture, they just decided to address the threat of knight takes c7 check to the king by playing king to d7. But white couldn't stop capturing anyway, so he captured here on f8, and then played bishop h6, attacking the rook that way, and black just resigned. So what's the point? Well, if black moves the rook somewhere, I don't really know. It's not very safe for black to move the rook, because knight f6 is also going to attack a lot of squares here. But let's say they go to c8, then white can play a calm move, something like king to e2, and your rook from a1 is suddenly extremely active, and it's going to grab one of these minor pieces, and white's going to have a significant material advantage, and so black just resigned. And the final example is going to address one of the really key ideas that you got to know for the bishop's opening, as well as for many other standard openings on amateur level. So in this case, what if white doesn't want to push this pawn forward to f4, because although I would actually highly recommend it, it's a very good attacking line, but what if white prefers playing a simple move knight to f3, which transposes it into, a very classical, one of the most common chess opening positions on amateur level. Here there's one thing that you got to know. At some point, usually you or your opponent are going to play bishop to g5, putting this pin. And what's critical to know about those positions, and that is that you should always maintain an idea for black to play pawn h6, and after bishop h4, you want to keep in reserve that idea of pushing the pawn to g5 to push this bishop away and neutralize the pain. So you want to always have that idea available. Now, why am I emphasizing this idea? Because the most common move in this position for black is bishop g4. Looks like there's nothing wrong. Black is just doing the same thing, pinning white's bishop. Okay, white goes pawn h3, but here comes the fatal mistake of black. In most cases, black actually retreats their bishop back to h5, and it looks like, it's just a normal move, symmetric move. Basically, black is mimicking white's moves, but in reality, that loses this option of pushing g5, because if white goes pawn g4 right now, attacking the bishop, and it goes back, notice that now it blockades this pawn and can no longer go to g5, so white can just play knight d5 and white simply wins the game. So that's how easily white can win the game, just by knowing this single little trick. Okay, so for black, again, let me revert back a couple moves. In this position, it was better for black at least to capture here on f3, because, then black would still have that option g5 available, or not to move their bishop on g4 in the first place, but move it, let's say, to e6 instead, So anyhow, if black just reserved that option of g5, black would be completely fine. But the most common move of black, again, goes like this, and black just goes straight into a losing position. And here black is already defenseless, There is this pin, white is attacking it, and black is completely locked in. There is nothing black can do. In this game, black tried pawn h5, which, white simply ignored. White played queen to d2 here. Black played knight b8. I mean, it looks weird, but in fact, black wants to play knight d7 and support the other knight that way. But that is too late. White captures there right away, and now he could throw the queen out there to h6. And supporting his attack, black tried h takes g4, but that failed to queen takes g6, taking advantage of this pin, and black just resigned, because on the next move after king h8, we can also take this pawn on f6, and white is completely winning. So again, that just goes to show you this common error of black, which you can take advantage of if you know how to do that right, and I hope that it's been useful for you. If you enjoyed the bishop's opening and would like to know more about it, you may check out my previous video about this, which got almost 2 million views, where I cover all the classical lines of the bishop's opening. You may click over there and check this out. And if you want to elevate your positional understanding overall, so that you know how to play positional chess in the middle game properly, you may attend my free masterclass by clicking the link over there. Give it a like if you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you soon.